Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you are. Welcome to the Hyperion Solutions Conference. I'll be speaking about the EPM Cloud, how you can automate your data interfaces. My name is Basheer Khan, and I do have a few slides introducing me. So the agenda for today is we'll go through the introduction, and then for those of you who may not be familiar, which I assume is probably going to be literally no one, but just touch base on what EPM Cloud is, specifically why we're going to talk about this enabling the automation. You'll understand that when I talk to you about the tool that Oracle provided for all these years, that's called EPM Automate. Then, because there's relevance, I'm going to briefly touch on what's called Oracle PaaS. We'll understand what that is. And lastly, we're going to be looking at the actual solution that we implemented for one of the clients, just like yourself, who had trouble pulling data into their Hyperion instance. At the end, I'll open up to Q&A, but do feel free. I will be monitoring the chat as well as Q&A. If you have questions, please start posting them. That way, as we get to the end of this presentation, I can start addressing your questions. With that said, that's my name, and I'm based out of Irvine, California. I'm actually repurposing these slides. I was speaking at the Latin America Oracle Users Council conference, and people were concerned about the fire, so I was just trying to show that we're truly blessed to be a bit far away from the fires. I know they're under control, but they're still burning some parts of the country. Hopefully everyone is safe. But that's where Irvine is. That's where I'm based out of, not too far from Oracle. That's where the headquarters is. A little bit of history. I started working with Oracle products in '88, and my first database was 5.1c. And I was so surprised when I found that there's someone who wrote a book about the database, and here it is. It's I think you could still buy it. I did not know there's such a book, because when I was learning, it was all trial and error trying to install it myself, but it was a very interesting experience, and it's been a great ride since then. In 1996, I started working with Oracle's applications, and these are the versions I've worked with. They came from green screen all the way to the current version of eBusiness Suite, so another interesting ride. I'm an ACE director. So Oracle recognizes experts globally. There's several ACE directors speaking at this conference. So my journey as an Oracle ACE director started in 2005. At that time, we were called Fusion Middleware Regional Directors. And then in 2007, I got moved to the ACE director group. My expertise as an ACE director is with cloud applications as well as middleware. That's functional knowledge of the applications as well as technology. In terms of applications, it includes all aspects of applications, ERP, HCM, CRM, as well as EPM, which is what I'm going to talk about today. I was very blessed to be a member of what Oracle called the Fusion Inner Circle. So when these applications are evolving, we're part of a group of about 100+ individuals invited globally to participate in validation and early testing and early adoption. So I have worked with these applications right from the inception to the current release that they are. Currently, I'm the founder and CEO of Knex Technology, and we are an implementation organization that implements all aspects of Oracle Cloud applications. Enough about me. The company itself has been around for 7+ years now, and here are some of the things we've done, several successful projects, lots of expertise, global offices, and we have actually touched 19 different countries with our implementation. It's been an amazing journey with a great team that's helping us get there. With that said, let's get to the gist of this presentation. The EPM Cloud, as I said, I'm sure all of you are familiar with, but I wanted to bring that up just to understand the journey. And it started out way back in the 70s, and it's currently evolved to the cloud-based version. But Hyperion has been around for a long, long time. It's so powerful. It gives so much capability to the organizations. As much as the product itself has evolved in terms of making it very user-friendly and so many aspects to it, the underlying technology when it comes to importing data has not evolved as much. I display the slide just to set the context. So every single of these business processes, as Oracle calls, and probably you're using a majority of these, or at least one of them, has an embedded cube. That was technology inherited from the Hyperion acquisition. And as I said, each one of these are very user-friendly, graphical user interface. You're able to generate your reports, do all kinds of analysis, consolidation, reconciliation, reporting. But the core, when it comes to pulling data in, as much as Oracle has provided some pre-built interfaces for you, when you try to extract and get data into your systems from your disparate systems, it's not as easy as you'd imagine. And that's where this solution I'm going to talk about is hopefully going to help you. So the solution I'm going to talk about is able to pull data from any data source into any of these cubes. So you could be using any of these modules and the solution is pervasive. It can go and pull data into any of these systems. Now, enterprise data management is a product that Oracle has that enables you to do so, and you can absolutely use that. We feel that the solution we're going to talk about today is a step over that, where you could make it simpler and easier, and more from a business person's perspective. It's a click of a button or a scheduled process that will enable such imports. And we'll talk about this some more. So before we go into our solution, let's talk about Oracle's approach if you wanted to import third-party data. And what I mean by that is, let me actually take a step back. There's a lot of pre-built capability. For example, if you're using Oracle Cloud applications, you can extract the actual general ledger info into your cube for comparing budget with actuals. You can do that seamlessly. It's just a configuration. It can be, it'll automatically pull everything in, it can be scheduled to do so. There's also write back capability. So whatever budget you finalize in the planning and budgeting system, for example, can be written back to the Oracle General Ledger and so forth. So there's several of these pre-built interfaces. That's not what I'm talking about. Beyond the General Ledger, there's a need. I can cite several instances. You have a need to pull in data by vendor, or you want to get sales specific information for your revenue planning. You want to pull in information about your employee payroll. You want to get really granular, pull that in, do some computations, aggregations, and then push it into the planning and budgeting cube, for example. And there's several of these instances that we have encountered, and that's what triggered this specific solution and how it evolved into being a product. So let's look at EPM Automate, which is predominantly the mechanism for you to push information in. I know it looks really taking back me to the days when I was learning about 5.1c. You have to actually go to the command prompt and you have to use this command, EPM Automate. First, you need to install that client, and then you have to log in to the cube. And then, for example, if you had all your account members that need to be loaded into the account dimension, all those values, you need to have them in a specific format. You create a zip file. So it's a two-step process. You'll upload the file into the instance, into the cloud, and then you will run a command to import that information and mention what kind of details you're importing and provide the zip file that you just uploaded. And after you uploaded them, you have to run the command to refresh the cube, and then you log on. So very powerful indeed. Don't get me wrong. That's what we've been using for a long time, and it can do much more than what I'm sharing here. In this case, I'm just citing an example of how you can import member information into the cube and subsequently refresh the cube so those members are available. And this could be used for any of the dimensions in the cube. You can run business rules. So there's a lot of capability, but I just wanted to pick two of the aspects. One is this, and then the other is to actually import GL information. If it's not coming from an Oracle instance, say it's coming from a third-party ERP, similar concept, you extract the info in a particular format, you upload that file, you can have several folders where you upload it, and then you have to run a data rule that'll pull all that information for a given period range. That's what you see here, March 15 to June 15. And this indicates in what mode you're pulling that into the staging area, and then in what mode you're pushing it into the cube, where to find that file that was just uploaded. So this is typically the set of commands you need to enter, and this helps you import data. Now, an important thing to note here is that if this data that's coming in has a dimension that's missing in the cube, the job will fail. The rule that you're running will fail. And that's a big problem, even with the pre-built out-of-the-box interfaces that Oracle has. You pulling monthly information, you created a couple of new GL account entries in your general ledger, but you missed a particular value in the cube, then that rule fails. You'll have to go through the log, figure out which one failed, and then go and update. Yes, they have the ability to refresh the periods automatically, but when it comes to other members that you may be having in your general ledger or in the cube, you have to first create them before you can load the data. So it's pretty unforgiving when it comes to missing values that are in the file that you're trying to upload and are not in the cube. So that also is something we became aware of early on, and that's something we've attempted to address as part of this information. I will come to your questions. Please pose them here. I will address each one of them as I complete the slide. I just want to make sure I cover all the slide and I have sufficient time to respond to your questions. And in case I miss, I promise you I'll respond to you via email if you provide your email address. So that's EPM Automate. I'm sure a majority of you are familiar with, and just wanted to present it to those who may not be familiar with. So I said before, the solution itself requires what's called Oracle PaaS. And what is PaaS? PaaS is Platform as a Service. And let me describe that in a little more detail. And it's very rare that I've seen PaaS used in conjunction with Oracle's EPM products. Most likely because the sales teams that sell the products are two different teams. They don't necessarily collaborate when they come to you with a solution, but I'll suggest that you may want to go and explore some of the capabilities that are out there. But before you do so, let me explain what this is. As you know, Oracle had several and continues to have several technology products. Their flagship product, the database, was initially only available on premise, and now the multiple flavors of the database that are available in the cloud. So essentially, if you look at any PaaS cloud service, it's taking that on-premise product, Oracle installing it in the cloud, and taking care of a number of other services surrounding that install. And I'll come to that in the next slide. And then providing that technology to you at a low monthly fee. So instead of it becoming a capital expenditure upfront, it becomes an OpEx that you pay month over month. And Oracle takes care of all aspects of it, including the hardware and so forth. So included in these kind of technology services, or rather product tech services, are the database, application development platforms, application servers as they're called, integration platforms, both real-time integration that can be achieved with Oracle Integration Cloud or a SOA cloud service, as well as bulk loads using the Oracle Data Integrator. All these are available in the cloud. You may already be familiar with the BI components, OBIEE, Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition. That's also available as a service, multiple flavors of it, most recent being Oracle Analytics. Autonomous is a new layer on top of these platform services that Oracle has introduced, where you don't need to worry about any aspect, and it's self-patching, self-tuning services. So all those comprise platform as a service, and you see there are several categories of these products, and they're available in the cloud. If you're more interested in this, or rather, before I go there, remember I told you that I'll mention what is it that Oracle does when you purchase platform as a service. All these aspects in the past, we had to either have a team or an individual. You had to acquire the hardware, you had to install, you had to configure these services. Everything you see on the right-hand side had to be done by the organization in order for this service to be available to use it within your organization. But everything is now handled by Oracle, and with Autonomous, they take it a step further. Its performance tuning is also addressed with Autonomous. So there's a lot of benefits you have by using platform as a service. If you're more interested in it, go to cloud.oracle.com. You'll see two different sections. The page is divided into three. On the right, you'll see the latest news about Oracle, but on the left, you'll see the Gen 2 cloud infrastructure. In the middle, you'll see cloud applications. Cloud applications is where you find information about their application products, including EPM. But if you go to the left section of the website, the Gen 2 cloud infrastructure is where all the platform services are available, including the one you'll need to run or implement the solution I'm going to talk about today. So if you drill a little bit further, you'll see all aspects that I mentioned on the prior slide. Now, specifically for this solution to work, you will need a database cloud service, which is the middle here on the left, and you'll need an aspect of the application development cloud service in order to run the solution. So those two components are used in the solution that I'm presenting. So apart from your EPM instance, you'll have to acquire two more cloud services, and the solution works really well. And I'll explain the need and the purpose of those two after I show you the solution and see how it can benefit you. So that's where you can find information about platform as a service. So all that was introductory comments about this specific aspect. The topic of my presentation today is how do you automate? You may have been using EPM Automate. You may have written scripts and really made it very efficient. Yes, I'm amazed at how some of the clients have leveraged that basic core set of commands, which can do a lot, into end-to-end processes that you run them off in the evening, and the next morning they've done their magic. You come in, you see your reports, and so forth. Can be done. Absolutely what was happening before, till we introduced this solution. So the approach we have taken is slightly different. The goal is to implement a console that looks and feels just like your existing EPM instance. So what you see here are components built by us that embed themselves on your existing page. So seamless integration, and it doesn't look like you're logging into a different system, no more command line. So essentially you'll see a couple of new icons or menu options show up. And then when you click that, you have the sub options and so forth. So it looks exactly like how EPM looks like. The way we were able to achieve this is we were trained by the Oracle usability team, the UX team, and they also gave us a rapid development kit that helped us use the same guidelines, patterns, and standards that the Oracle product team uses for their own product. Now, what's interesting about what you're seeing here is, even though it looks like an EPM instance, when you click any of these options and get into a particular page, it's not really running on the same server where your EPM software is running. It's actually going to the other cloud services that I mentioned, namely that application development cloud service, and it's accessing the database cloud. So it's just completely separate from your EPM instance. And yet, from a user experience standpoint, it looks just like you are accessing another option on the same page. So this is just a demo, and I have a live version of this I'll show you momentarily. But once you get here, the logs of AHC activity, and I'll come to that page, but if you click on the schedule processes, you'll get to this page. And this is where the majority of the definitions or setup of how you connect to your different applications is established. And we'll go through a few steps how you set this up. But imagine you had 10 different systems that you want to pull information from, and you want to schedule them to run at a certain time, or you want to run them on demand. So this page has the ability to either set up a schedule, or you can simply click a button. If something didn't run or you had to rerun something, you click a button and it'll re-import. Now, sky's the limit as to what you want to import. Some of you who are using FCCS may know that there's not support for periods beyond 12. And one of the solutions we had was to establish a process that'll import P13 and P14. Just some examples. Importing payroll data, as I mentioned, ERP data from third party that do not have connectivity. It could be even Oracle's own products. Say you want to pull it from JD Edwards and so on. So, and then the most important part is, remember I showed you EPM Automate and how you import the metadata, or how it fails if a value is missing. One of the cool features of this solution is that regardless of what you're importing, it'll keep track of all the values, the dimension members, and the moment it encounters a new value that wasn't there, it hadn't encountered before, it's something new coming in, to prevent the interface from failing, it'll actually insert that metadata automatically. So it sort of parses the information that you're pulling in, and if there's a new member that needs to be added to the metadata and the cube needs to be refreshed, that happens automatically. So that results in these processes not failing. Now, if you want to specifically import any metadata, you just go define another process and schedule it. And that could be automated as well. So if you're having a large amount of employees that are being hired, you could have a scheduled running process that's pulling all the employee information and loading that into the queue. So as I said, sky's the limit. You could set any amount of processes, any number of processes that will help you pull your data in. Obviously, behind the scenes, what's happening is it's leveraging the newer flavor of EPM Automate. It's called the EPM API, and I'll go to the screen where you configure that. But that's what's happening. So you no longer need to go to the command prompt and enter all those commands. This specific page will enable that automatically, and there's some setup that's involved. I'll walk you through that, and I'll show you a live version of this console. So when you go to the view interface logs, you could get a history of all the jobs that ran, and you could search for them by date range. You could search for them by various states, because sometimes these may fail or there could be errors. So you could review them and rerun the jobs. So that's definitely possible. So this page, which can also be accessed directly from the home page, as I showed you, has the ability to give you a snapshot of what's going on. How did your processes and jobs fare? So you no longer have to go into the instance, into data management, to look at the jobs over there. Now, remember I told you can set up schedules. So here you could come for any process. You may decide to schedule them, or you just have the definition you're running on demand. So here you can come in and say, run it daily or weekly. And you can say what the start time is. It'll maintain when it last ran, and so such stuff. So there's a scheduler behind the scenes that's able to track and keep up to date with running these processes. Now, coming back to the schedule processes page, which we saw earlier, you may have seen the upload and run. So what we did just now is we went to the view interface logs, we saw the setup schedule, but when you click on this one, this is to upload a file. You have a file, you did not establish a scheduled job, or you did not connect to the source system, but you're receiving a file by email, you simply save it on your local workstation, and then you can come here and click this one of these options, depending on the type of info, and simply choose the file from your local workstation and upload it. And then it behaves as though it got pulled from the source system. So we're talking about you being able to upload files, connect to servers where the files are, pull it from there. More interestingly, you can actually connect to databases, either Oracle or SQL Server, any data source that's ODBC or JDBC compliant. You can simply connect and pull data based on certain conditions from that data source and treat that as a data set that gets uploaded. So it's very versatile in terms of which systems it can connect to, what information can be pulled in, and so forth. So let me show you some of those setup aspects. So what we saw was under data integration, we saw the scheduled processes and the interface log, those two options. Here in the setup, there's a few aspects I want to show you. There are others that I have not enabled, but for example, the files server setup is not visible here, but at least you can see how the DB can be set up. So this is to show you how the Oracle database can be set up, and the other data sources that we can connect to when you select the dropdown here, but just an example of how you configure a connection to an Oracle data source. Next, this is where you establish that process, the rules that we talked about. So you can actually give it any name. The rule name will be the name of the rule that runs on the EPM side. So indeed, you need to have a rule. We're not, there's dependency on our EPM's core capability to load the data. And once the rule is established, think of it as you're linking the EPM rule with a data source and making that bridge happen. So you're able to pull information on demand or schedule it to run. And this is where you can actually give the query, regardless of the technology. It could be Oracle or SQL Server. You establish the query, you could test it, and then data start flowing. Remember I told you about the newer version of EPM Automate. It's the EPM API. So every instance that you have will have the API info. So you need to provide the credentials, how you're going to connect and how you're going to invoke that API. That's what is being configured on this page. So that's the solution. And essentially what it's doing is it's using Oracle's Java cloud service to present these pages and these options. And then behind the scenes, it's storing information in an Oracle database cloud service. That's how we're able to, one, establish all these processes and track how they're running and use the scheduler that's built into the DB, as well as that's where it's storing key information so it'll detect a new value coming in and invoke a different process to load that new value before loading the actual data. So there's a small footprint of data that gets stored in this database cloud service that's part of the solution, and that enables you or simplifies the task of these imports. With that said, let me actually show you a live version of this. As I indicated, you have the interface log and schedule processes. I'll walk through the exact same pages that I showed you. So this is where you'd go. You can select any one of these or create a new one. We'll create one when I click on the setup screen, and then you can go to the interface logs. You can see what's happening with the logs. You can go back and forth between the two to run it again, check the log, and so on. This is where you go and set up the schedule. It shows red if the date has passed, so that's an indication that you're setting the wrong date. It'll never run if it's a past date, and so on. And this is where you're able to simply go pick any one of these options and select a file and proceed from there. So those are the options I showed you from a scheduled processes standpoint. And next, I showed you some of the setup pages. You could go here. You can establish the DB connection, as I said. We have not set up other DBs, but there's a list of options you could enable and configure depending on your need. and then you can also set up new processes, as I said, and test the queries. You can also go and, this is the same setup schedule. This is the EPM API that I talked about. So you can establish the API and connect to it and test it out. So we found that specifically for the one client we had implemented, this was very useful for them. They had a lot of info coming from a third-party payroll company. They were using a non-Oracle ERP, and we were able to connect directly to the SQL Server data source, pull in the general ledger actuals, and push it into the planning. But they were using enterprise planning and budgeting, but it could pretty much be used with any EPM product as long as the Cube and the support for EPM API. We can deploy the solution and use. So in this presentation, what I wanted to show you was a capability of leveraging platform as a service or components that you typically would not think of when you're looking at EPM, and how the two could be made to work together and establish a solution like this. The best part for them was they get a lot of new values, new employees, sometimes new accounts, and the processes did not fail, and they simply continued to work, and it just streamlined all the imports quite effectively. So that's the solution I wanted to talk to you about today. With that, I'm going to address some of the questions I see. If you have additional questions, please continue to post them. Oh, by the way, if you need to know more about the platform products that I mentioned, this is the link. cloud.oracle.com/pass will take you there directly. If you have additional questions after this webinar ends, you can email me or follow me on Twitter and ask me questions there as well. Happy to address them. Let me see, there are a few questions. The first was, can the command line arguments shown be scripted? Absolutely. So, and that's what the majority of the users have done. You can write scripts and those scripts run. And with shell scripting, you can also pass parameters, and you can have those being passed to EPM Automate. And that has been the norm. And this is just a more elegant alternative, but that still works. The next question was, for metadata, can you simply add new members, or must the entire dimension be uploaded each time? No, you only need to add the missing members, so the delta. But the important thing is, after you add any new members, you will have to refresh the cube so they are propagated and published and available to you. So indeed, you just pass the delta members that are missing. The next question is this a freestanding on-prem cloud solution that connects and integrates to EPBCS and other cloud EPM apps? That's absolutely right. It's a freestanding app. It's not an Oracle product. It's just something we rolled out to customers and have made available to others if there is interest. It's leveraging Oracle's technology. It's built exactly conforming to Oracle's guidelines, patterns, and standards. I was part of a recent briefing I cannot disclose because of non-disclosure constraints, but there is some more automation capability coming from Oracle. I was very pleased to see that. You should see the announcements coming soon. But despite that, there's still a need for such a tool, because what that's going to address is still a subset of capability, and then this being versatile can connect to pretty much any file or database data source and pull it in and automate it. So, and then a second part of the question is any metadata load and import functionality. It's actually built in. So as I said, there's three aspects. One, you can actually load the facts that go in, and you can use it for your reporting, just like you'd use EPM Automate and load the data, actuals, or budget for the matcher. You can pretty much load anything. But beyond that, there's the capability to just load the metadata, which you can do it multiple ways. You can use EPM Automate. You can use Smart View to just have all your members there and upload them and so forth. You have been able to do so. You can even key them in, but you can actually set up a process. So if there's constantly a metadata file that's being generated, or there's a table which people are inserting values that become part of your metadata, you could establish a process and it'll automatically import all the metadata for you. So that's the first aspect, is the facts, and the next aspect is the metadata. But the most interesting aspect is the correlation of the two. So as you're loading your actual data and there's metadata component missing, it'll actually trigger a metadata import for the delta values that are missing, and then proceed with the loading of the information that you're looking for. That's what makes it very efficient. So there's no more errors and logs that fail to load, and you can just continue with business as usual. So I hope I answered your question on that. There's a next question. What's the difference between data integration and data exchange? Yes, so that's a part of the new functionality that you are getting from Oracle themselves, and that's where it comes in. I defer that to a subsequent presentation because it's quite involved talking about integration and exchange. But suffice to say that if your functionality, if your need is addressed by what Oracle is providing, either data integration or exchange, you don't need a solution like this. This is specifically meant for folks where the product that Oracle, or the solution that Oracle is providing, does not cover the out-of-the-box, is not covered by the out-of-the-box functionality that Oracle provides, and you have to depend on scripting or writing your own custom code. That's what this is addressing. But yes, there's several powerful capabilities as such available within Oracle that enables this. Use that. If it addresses your need, I'd say that's what you need to use, not this one. The next question is, does EPM agent not already provide a heterogeneous data source connectivity? Yes, it does provide the ability. There's a component called EPM agent. Again, this solution itself evolved several years ago, and it does provide the ability to connect to heterogeneous data sources. But if you try that, there's still aspects that you'll find would be blocking items. And some of the challenges I told you include, the ability to trap errors and, not having to go back and create the metadata and then load it again. There's lots of challenges we found when you directly connect and let the EPM data management process that information, versus having a solution like this where you control the sequence of the aspects of how it gets loaded and how you can identify what's missing and handle those errors. So this solution is more to ensure that everything works in a hands-off mode versus you using the agent to directly connect. Not saying that over several new versions, Oracle is going to finesse their data integration, the data exchange, and the EPM agent capability. But at the point we introduced the solution, and even today, we are finding a need to where clients are using this capability to further streamline. Of course, you have many choices, including building something like this on your own or leveraging whatever technology you're using today. I just felt because this was a huge success with the client that we worked with, I'd come out here and share this with you and see if it makes sense. My pleasure. I appreciate all of you attending this session. I don't see any additional questions at this point.
It doesn't look like there are any additional questions. So thank you, Basheer, so much. That was a really informative, interesting presentation, and we appreciate you being here.